Coming at you live from all over Ohio. A Cleveland Browns podcast full of laughs, rants, fun, and stats. A place where all Browns fans' voices are welcome and heard. A show that aims to inform and entertain you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Barking Browns Show.
What's up, everybody? We're back after a week off. Welcome into episode 92 of the Barking Browns Show. I'm Jacob. That's my co-host, Nick. Nick, how are you this evening?
You know what? 92. We are charging full head of steam to 100. I can't wait. But I'm just going to get this off my chest immediately because we didn't actually, it's irrelevant. But I'm going to get it off my chest immediately. Controversial take, hot take, I don't know. I'm glad Cincinnati lost. I'm glad Kansas City's in the Super Bowl. I'm not rooting for Kansas City. I did not want it to be Cincinnati. There have been so many teams. If you consider basically our Browns fandom, you and I, because I'm 32, you're 32 now, right? Recent birthday. Mm-hmm. Hey. Our Browns fandom is 1999 and forward. And in that time, we've seen the Ravens win the Super Bowl twice. We've seen the Steelers win the Super Bowl twice. They've been to another. Right. I couldn't do it again. We just saw the Bengals in the Super Bowl last year, and it was like cute, I guess, because nobody expected them to be there. You know what? Bengals made it to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. All of a sudden, you're talking all of these like crazy, amazing things about them. I can't take that as a Browns fan. You know, if you could do that, if you want to root for Cincinnati, that is fine by me, but you will not find me wearing any colors but these ones.
Well, I didn't know exactly where this show was going to start, but I suppose that is as good of a place as anywhere. Guys, we are brought to you as always by our friends over at Homage Apparel. The NBA Jam shirt there. I got the classic orange Brownie the Elf. This also comes in brown if you don't like orange. Sure does. But I didn't have enough orange in the wardrobe, so I thought it was appropriate to get the orange in the wardrobe going on. We got a link in the description down below if you want to check this out. If you're listening to the audio version, there's a link in that description as well if you want to go check out our friends over at Homage Apparel. We would really, really appreciate it. It's the Senior Bowl. It's Senior Bowl week. Practice is kicked off today. You had all your weigh-ins, some players coming in a little bit smaller than you expected. I think that I was really kind of surprised that Carl Brooks looks like he's put on some size. And from early returns, looks like he's still as athletic as he was on tape. So that was pretty cool from one day. So we got all that stuff coming in. We got championship weekend that just happened, decided your Super Bowl. We're going to get through all of it. We're going to discuss it, but real quick, just some programming notes, and then we'll dive into the championship recaps and talk about those games. I don't know if our draft episode this week will happen on Friday. It may if I get the time on Thursday night, but I will sit down with Browns Wire and Lions Wire's Jeff Risden, who is down at the Senior Bowl right now, will sit down with me Sunday after the Senior Bowl. Practices and game have all come and gone. We'll sit down and talk about what he saw at the Senior Bowl, and we'll get that out as well. But there may be a live mock draft for Friday morning as well. It just depends on where we're going. So just some programming notes from there for what's coming from us coming up soon. So, Nick, let's start. We're going to start in the NFC. We're going to start with the NFC Championship game. We'll just talk about both of these games just a little bit, and then we're going to move towards Senior Bowl as well as a Browns offseason wish list is I think where we're going to go for tonight. So thoughts on a game that I thought would be fun, a game that I thought would be interesting, and the complexity changed almost immediately, and it was just a terrible game to watch. But the Eagles' victory in the NFC Championship to cash their ticket to the Super Bowl.
You know what? I kind of thought it would be cool to see Kyle Shanahan back in the Super Bowl, and this time as a head coach, especially with the stories of to go from Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo to Brock Purdy, and then you're on Josh Johnson, and like if they could have pulled that off, that would what a story that would have been for them. But it is pretty cool to see. You know, when the Browns hired Andrew Berry, I thought Howie Roseman is obviously one of the most respected in the league for running a team and his decision making and all that stuff. So I was really excited that Andrew Berry spent a year in Philly there to kind of gain that knowledge. So it's really It's really fun to see Philadelphia, I think, rebuild and get back to this place all over again, because I don't think that they've done it the necessarily conventional way. You know, they didn't spend this high pick on a quarterback. They didn't give up massive assets to do it. And so, to take your guy and develop him, and not that Jalen Hurts had a stellar game in this one or not necessarily, but obviously he was great to help them get there. And it was just really, my takeaway from this overall is just the ferocity with which both defensive lines played. And And just from a Browns perspective, and like you compare it to what we have, there's a long way to go there. But I think there's a lot that we can take away positively about where the Browns are at. And I'm excited. I think Philadelphia is fun. I love their passion as fans. And I was glad to see them win. I would have taken either one.
Yeah, I had my money on the Niners. Of course, I didn't think that they would be down to literally no healthy quarterbacks that could throw the ball by halftime, but it's just, I heard Jake Burns say this on his pod. He's like, sometimes you're just effed, and that's where they were. They got to the point where they were just screwed, and there was nothing they could do when it came to the quarterback situation with Purdy, who now it is revealed toward the UCL in his elbow. Doesn't think he'll need total Tommy John surgery, but still probably surgery that'll keep him out like 6 months. I think he'll be ready for camp, that sort of thing. And that's just tough, man. Yeah. I felt really bad for Kyle Shanahan and that offense and that team, just because you worked so hard and went through so much adversity. You lost Trey Lance at the beginning of the year. You lost Jimmy Garoppolo. You were relying on Mr. Irrelevant, who was just balling. Yep. And you had this amazing defense, which leads to DeMarco Ryans. I was trying to say his name there when didn't want to come out, getting a 6-year contract as the head coach of the Houston Texans today. So congratulations to him. That defense was, people were like talking about it. Oh, maybe that defense wasn't. Actually, I think that game's a lot different with Brock Purdy healthy, because I think San Francisco only starts letting up all those points and things in the second half because they're on the field the whole time. I think their defense was just tired. It was wore out. As Browns fans, we've seen that narrative play out more than a fair amount of times in Cleveland. I just really want Kyle Shanahan to have a good quarterback. Like, he's had Matt Ryan. Look at all the success he's had. And like the dude that was like an MVP, he led him to an MVP, and Matt Ryan. That's it, man. Other than that, it's just like some guys that get hot. Jimmy Garoppolo's had some stretches. We don't really know what's going on with Trey Lance. I think that's a fascinating story, by the way, what's going to happen quarterback-wise in San Francisco. I think another hot quarterback carousel this offseason, I think, is going to be really fascinating, captivating yet again. And that's probably right where it starts, I think, in San Francisco. So all I really got from that game was I was just disappointed for Kyle Shanahan and that team, because I think they're a really good team. I really like Kyle Shanahan, and it just, sometimes the dice sometimes it's just better to be lucky than good. And I think some of the luck was on Philly's side in terms of health, but I will not discredit Philly. That is a really freaking good football team. I did not think that they would win this game. And I think obviously it's different with the quarterback situation, but Philly showed up, man. And so bravo to them. I'm excited for the Kelsey Bowl going on in a couple of weeks. I'm excited for that. So real quick, let's talk about the AFC Championship game, and then we'll move on. We'll talk about some Browns. And for everybody that's listening, they're like, well, 10 minutes in, we're not talking about Browns. Well, I'm sorry. But anyway, it's what happened, right? It's what happened, and the Browns didn't have really anything that happened that's really lead the show off good, right? I really loved that game, man. I enjoyed the heck out of that game. I will say this first and foremost. I'm so over Bengals Twitter, dude. Listen, I get it. Officials suck. The game is not rigged. The officials did not steal the game from you. Joseph Asai did commit a penalty. That was not a hold. Go ask Joe Thomas. It was not a hold on that final play of Kansas City's. Go learn offensive line play and the rules. I would be doing, and I will preface this by saying I would be doing the same thing if I was them. So I'm not going to completely, but I'm just saying from a rational point of view, come on, let's calm down a little bit. But man, Are we looking, some people, this is not an original thought of mine. This is a million people have brought this out, but is Burrow, Mahomes, Brady, Manning too? These showdowns in the regular season, these showdowns in the AFC playoffs, not just in the AFC Championship, although the two have been in the AFC Championship, but you could see it in other things. Are we looking at that, the beginning of these two, superstar quarterbacks barreling down classic matchups? All I know is that was a really, really fun football game. I'm glad I got to experience it. I'm glad that Cincinnati lost because I couldn't take it anymore.
Yep.
I live in Athens. I work in Athens. Trust me, last year was very hard for me when the entire city is never cared about the Bengals or anything before, but now it's all they talk about. So that was kind of sucked. But I thought it was a really fun game. I think Kansas City. Some people are just saying Philly's going to run all over them, and I just don't think that's true in any way, shape, or form. And I was really excited to see Kansas City step up, Patrick Mahomes just be Patrick Mahomes on one leg and somehow manage to win that game. And I don't know, man. I thought it was a really good game to end the weekend.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely was. You know what? I really thought I was not that I wanted Cincinnati to win, but I was all in on as far as betting goes. I was betting the Bengals because I was like, Patrick Mahomes is hurt. The Bengals just played probably like I thought Buffalo was really good entering that game against Cincinnati. Buffalo, and for Cincinnati to dominate them like they did, because when we both picked. No, well, I think we both picked the Chiefs, but I really thought the Bengals were going to give them a lot more of a run for their money, especially with. I mean, you saw like when they panned to Mahomes a lot. I mean, he's hobbling. Dude is another level of quarterback. And I don't think it's going to be all that long until the Mahomes comparisons to Brady, like they start putting up Mahomes stats and start putting up Brady stats. And I just saw that Mahomes tied Brady's record for most playoff wins before, I think in the first X seasons. I don't remember the exact stat, but my point is, I think as time goes on, it definitely, and that's, what the point you brought up is why I'm so glad the Bengals lost, because this Mahomes, Burrow, Manning, Brady, all that stuff is just brutal as a Browns fan. And I definitely, to be fair, I definitely think that could be the case. And I hate that, but it's also, I mean, as just a fan of the sport, it's awesome. So I'm hoping that the Browns have something to say about this division moving forward. But I mean, they've already played so many times, and you could tell how much both teams really wanted it. You know what? You brought up something though about like all this NFL rig talk, and I think it would be we'd be missing out if we didn't at least address this. And I was going to tweet this, and I just didn't. So I just want to ask for the show. I would like to know why there cannot be an NFL referee academy established where people could go to school for NFL refereeing. They could have a more standardized set of teach. It could be a full-time type gig. I've never understood, because the NFL is the biggest thing. Every year, the Super Bowl is the most watched event. The NFL dominates all of TV, all of this stuff, and it's one of the most money-making watched spectacles there is. I think it's a disservice to the magnitude that this sport holds over this country to not have the best officiating possible. And especially an organization that is not hurting for money. I have no idea why it doesn't make sense to create a system of full-time refs to improve officiating to the best level it can be, and to call games the most fairly as they can be. And like I said, I didn't want Cincinnati to win, but even I could see that some of those calls are questionable at best. So Jacob, I am asking you to explain to me, like I'm 5, why the NFL can't have a referee academy. It's frustrating. I honestly, talking about it, I'm getting frustrated.
They should be full-time, and I don't even really think that's a conversation. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, make them full-time, and then we can have more conversations. Like, I think it's that simple. Does that fix everything? No, I don't necessarily think that fixes everything, and it doesn't fix everything immediately, but you make them full-time, and then we can reevaluate from there. Like, I think that's step one. Listen, they make a lot of money, so I don't really, even though they're not called full-time, they probably could be, with the exception of I don't think they get great benefits because it's not a full-time situation. You've got the means. You've got a product that is now been hurt again by your own doing, by your officiating, by by calling them, well, not just calling them, but by them not being full-time, and they're affecting games. And I think it gets exaggerated by every fan base that doesn't win when there's some calls. They're all, and we do it. Everybody does it. I get that. And I do think from an outsider's looking in, I don't think it was nearly as bad as what they were trying to say, but there's an easy fix. I'm not saying this will fix it 100%, but there's an easy path to improvement, and that's making them full time. And I really, you're saying, convince me this, have this conversation. I don't even think it's a conversation. I think it's, hey, the heck are you doing? It's easy. It's simple. I don't know that it'll make it perfect. It won't. It will not make it perfect. It will make it better. And I think that's it. I think that's the conversation.
It's the biggest sport there is in this country. It's one of the biggest sports in the world. And we have got non-full-time officiating. It just, those two things don't add up to me, especially when you are making money every year hand over fist. The salary cap just went up to 226.
It went up by 16.5 million. So
okay, so the NFL's not hurting, right?
Yeah.
So I see no reasonable explanation why we can't have the best officiating of the best sport in America. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the conversation. Let's move on. All right. So we're going to talk about the Senior Bowl here. We're going to do some talk here about the Senior Bowl, some Browns offseason previews, all that good stuff. We're jumping into that now. So the Senior Bowl has officially begun in Mobile, Alabama. We've got all the people weighing in. We've got the measurements. We've got the first set of data that's not provided to us by the teams. And that's when you start to really look into, is this guy as big as they said he was? Does this change your mind about him if he's bigger or smaller or has longer arms or whatever? Does it confirm? Does it deny? I'll preface this by saying, don't fall in love with something you see this week as being definitive. And what I mean by that is you're going to see players that are going to have their stock rise. They're going to have their stock fall. And that's fine. And you're going to see things you like and things you don't like. And you're going to judge a prospect by those sort of things. And that's fine. It's not the ultimatum. It's not the be all end all. I said this about Perion Winfrey last year. Had an amazing Senior Bowl. That Senior Bowl is not what his tape looked like. There was some issues. Why was this so much better? Well, it comes to the NFL, we see flashes of it, right? And by the end of the year, I think he was a much better player than he was in the beginning of the year. I think there were some maturity things, and I think he got over some of those things. If a guy dominates the Senior Bowl, but he has fourth-round tape, he's not a first-rounder. That's what we did with Perion Winfrey. We thought, he'll be there. He'll be there top of the second round because he had first-round tape. Or he had first-round Senior Bowl. We had a fourth-round tape, and he ends up being a fourth-round pick. So remember that if you just see a bunch of videos of a guy dominating one-on-ones, yes, that's good. That's good. But if his tape is don't overreact either way. Don't overreact either way. We can learn a lot of things from the Senior Bowl. One thing I do like to point out that is really important is small school players. You've got a player that I like a lot in Carl Brooks, the defensive tackle from Bowling Green, and who I've been able to see in person. It is just a ferocious pass rusher from the interior, and he can kick out. And he came in over 300 pounds, where I believed he was around 280, 275, 280. It's what I thought he was looking at him on tape. And he's much bigger and stronger. And from what I have seen, I haven't been able to watch all of practice, but I will get to it. I'll be breaking all of this down here on YouTube. I'll break it all down over at the Browns Wire. Corey Kennan and I will take care of all of that over there. Watching all the practice tape and all the game tape. And I will really get into some of that stuff this weekend, as some time becomes more available. But you're looking at, a guy that already still looks like what he looked like on tape, but a little bit bigger. Oh, buddy, you know what that does to me? And you're looking at a guy that goes up against Bowling Green, Mid-American Conference, mid-major. That is what the competition he is playing, and he dominated it. And if he's a good player that'll play in the NFL, he should dominate that level of competition. Well, here's the thing. Now he's going up against players from the Big Ten, the SEC, the Pac-12, all of it, right? The Big 12, all of it. You're going up against it, and you're getting the opportunity to go up against these guys one-on-one. These are the guys I think you should pay the most attention to. Guys like smaller schools and guys that had smaller roles, right? Like Lucas Van Ness. I love Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. He never started a game at Iowa. Does that really mean that much? No, if he's a good freaking football player, I don't give a crap if he started any games. But he has a little bit more limited tape because he didn't play as much. Well, now he's getting some more tape against – this is an all-star game is my point. The Senior Bowl is an all-star game and a game for people that need to add to their tape because maybe their tape is at a mid-major or something like that. You know what I mean? So, I wanted to say that before we started talking about the Senior Bowl and just say that the draft process, we learn stuff, but remember that the Senior Bowl, the Combine, all that stuff, it adds to the scouting report, not it is the only part of the scouting report.
I was going to say, because we talked when the Browns did have that second round pick, right? We were talking all the time about their options. And a lot of times, Perion Winfrey was listed as one of those options. And I think that a lot of that talk was generated from his Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he shot right up boards at the Senior Bowl. So,
I think obviously, Jacob, like you said, especially for the guys at smaller schools with less tape, that's going to be a tremendous opportunity for them. And I'm sure there will be gems, diamonds in the rough. But just because somebody is flashing there doesn't necessarily mean that. Although I will say, it is really exciting to kind of get to this point of the year and to start, because for so long up until now, we've been so focused on the Browns' deficiencies, right? But there's not really a direct answer as to how to fix that. But I think that's my favorite part of this is that all of a sudden, especially because the Browns have 8 picks, right? And people keep saying the Browns don't have any picks. The Browns can't improve. The Browns, there's this weird narrative that the Browns don't have any draft picks when they have 8 picks and every team starts with 7. So yes, you're not going to find impact players over the entirety of the draft, but you're probably going to find some. And having that amount of picks, I think the Browns can very much improve their team and fix a lot of the things that people are trying to say they can't.
Their number 2 receiver who had a really good season was a 6th round pick. That's all you need to remember about some things like that. Their best cover corner last year was a 3rd round pick. So who was still a rookie while being the best cover corner on the team. So there's those facts. A side note too, congrats on the Eagles for hiring Andrew Berry's twin brother, Adam Berry. He will be a member of the Eagles in May. Yeah, he's a trader for Goldman Sachs right now. So
it's funny. It's funny. I doubt the Eagles are going to catch a lot of blowback for his background.
They're like almost identical twins too. They're twins.
Wow.
I knew he had a twin brother, but I totally forgot about it until they're like, oh, we're just going to do this. I appreciate the kind words from MC. I am happy to do all the work for you guys. I want to start. So we talk about the Senior Bowl. We're not going to focus on the Senior Bowl a whole lot because we've had one day of practice. Neither of us have been able to watch it. I've seen some clips during the day. I haven't been able to watch it. Like I said, maybe, I'll be sitting down with Jeff Risden on Sunday to break all of that stuff down. And I'm going to write up on a lot of stuff that I see over the next coming weeks and kind of evaluating some of these positions and stuff. I have a film room. If you're watching this live, it'll be tomorrow, but I have a film room coming out on Wisconsin defensive tackle Keanu Bennett tomorrow, and how he could be the answer to the run defense issues. And funny I should say that, because on day one of the Senior Bowl, Keanu Bennett dominated drills. And I mean, there is a lack of consistency from him as a pass rusher. Like, that's why he's not a blue chip second round, maybe not even a third round. I've got like a mid-third, early third, late second round grade on him, but he's not really considered there by a lot of people. A lot of people have him borderline outside the top 100, and he's 317, 6'4", I believe. Just a very large human being. And he just doesn't give up. He does the thing that the Browns couldn't do, right? He does not give up any ground against the run. He absorbs double teams, and he fights through the process, right? If you string it out, he will move laterally really, really well to stop the run game. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. Keanu Bennett is everything that we lacked in the run defense. And I just don't see a consistent pass rusher in terms of technique and hand placement. He's got sneaky good athleticism. I've seen him swim move some centers and guards at 320 pounds. And I'm okay. I think like, that's so bright. He's not an unathletic player. He's just an unrefined pass rusher. But I'm telling you, man, this is the kind of guy that you look at and you say, okay, you have this part of your game that is borderline elite. I think he's a borderline elite prospect when it comes to defending the run. And now he's doing these flashes on day one, and you're like, okay, show me that the rest of this week, and we can have us a good conversation, because you're starting to show me the things that I didn't see. And you're starting to say, hey, though I'm not refined, though I'm not going to probably be a 3-down player as a rookie, oh man, Keanu Bennett was just chucking some dudes and swimming some dudes at like 320 pounds. And I really like JL Skinner and Derek Hall and some other guys we're going to talk about, both of those guys at the Senior Bowl. But it becomes evident every day that I thought JL Skinner was Alex Wright of this draft. No, it's Keanu Bennett, man. I love Keanu Bennett from Wisconsin. Like I said, for Browns Wire tomorrow, there's only a few clips in there. I've got a couple sets of 3 clips back to back, so 6 clips right there for you guys to check out tomorrow. But if you got some time, you want to watch some tape, go watch Keanu Bennett at Wisconsin and just salivate at the idea of him in the middle of that defensive line next to Myles Garrett.
I was going to ask you, so I'm newer to this than you are. This is your area of expertise. So hearing this about him, do you know where he's projected, like what round he's projected to go in? He's around
the top 100. So he's late day 2, early day 3. So I think like if you go to like NFL mock draft database, which I like a lot because they take all of the mocks and all of the boards from across the internets and they get like a consensus board. And that's why I like theirs the most, because if you go to PFF, you're going off their board. If you go to Pro Football Network, you're going off their board. If you go to the Draft Network, you're getting their board. But like if you go to the Browns on NFL mock draft database, you'll see all of my mocks that have been published. You'll see Dog Pound Daily's mocks that have been published. All of these things that are coming together to try to build what they think is the Browns board. And they got Benton around 120. I think he's probably top 80 in this class, but I'm thinking if you're the Browns and you're sitting there at 98, I think you should feel relatively well that he'll be there.
Okay.
At the end of the 3rd round, yeah.
That's that is the Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that is the 2nd of the 2 3rd-round picks that they got for his hiring. Okay.
And so we'll see. Moving forward, too, Glenn Cook got more interviews this year. The Browns could end up with 2 more thirds here. He didn't get hired in this cycle to this point, but I think he's getting interviews for a reason.
He's really well respected in that field. So I think what you'll get a lot from me. By the way, each week I will do a film room on Browns Wire for a prospect every week for the remainder of the draft cycle, as well as weekly mock drafts, doing all kinds of crazy shit over there. So we got that stuff going on, and Keanu Benton's the first one. Derek Hall will be this weekend. I'll sit down and do it because it just takes me a lot of time to do some of those. But Keanu Benton, watch him this week. Keep an eye on him. Trevor Sikkema from PFF said he had an amazing day. I just keep seeing those things. And don't get me wrong, and people are going to say, well, he's going to fly up draft boards. Just remember, this is what happened to Perion Winfrey. He still went in the 4th round. So they're not going to – he will potentially go up draft boards. He's not going to fly up. I mean, he might fly up mocks. But I think the tape shows you what the tape shows you. And the Senior Bowl, one day into the Senior Bowl, it shows you that he's working on deficiencies. And that's a good sign. That doesn't mean you overdraft him, but that means, okay, man, like he's getting better. Like you're doing that sort of thing. Another guy, man, that everybody should have a really close eye on is Auburn's Derek Hall. And then we'll move off the Senior Bowl because there's really not that much to talk about. But we're talking about the Senior Bowl. We're talking about the AFC and NFC Championship. We'll talk about some Browns wish lists. Derek Hall is a guy that is quickly flying up my boards. I want to say hi to Josh and MC checking it out over there. MC thinks thoughts on the Pro Bowl. Listen, like when Tyler Huntley throws 2 touchdown passes and make the Pro Bowl, that's all you need to know, man. You can go ahead I can tell. There is something, and we'll get to Derek Hall in a second. Go ahead.
You know what? Jacoby Brissett ran a top 10 offense with the Cleveland Browns. He was thought of, he struggled in Miami and was thought of to maybe be close to being out of the league, right? He threw double the touchdowns to interceptions, set majority of his career highs, right? And I get it. The Browns aren't this team that anyone wants to talk about because of the whole Deshaun Watson thing, and the NFL tried to bury them with all their 1:00 games. I understand that too. But Jacoby Brissett was easily one of the feel-good stories of the NFL season if you watched any Browns football. And so it was bad enough first when Tyler Huntley, who was 1-4, if I'm mistaken, because some people tried to say, oh, well, I
believe he started 6. I thought he started 6 games, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. It wasn't very good.
It wasn't a good record. And like Jacob said, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Okay. And so some people tried to say, oh, well, the Ravens made the playoffs and had a better season, so that's why Huntley's getting the recognition. Well, if you look at the 2 quarterbacks, like, is this a team award? Are wins a quarterback stat? Or is this an individual performance award? Because
it's an individual performance award.
It is. Exactly. Thank you.
How many? Let me ask you this. When you're talking about, well, the Ravens were winning, they went to the playoffs. Great point. Okay. How many games did you watch of Tyler Huntley this year play when he was the starter? I watched like 3 of them, and it was awful. It was dreadful. It looked like crap. So you cannot go out there and say Jacoby Brissett put his team in positions to win, and they weren't always able to capitalize for him. Tyler Huntley, like, you always talked about, this was the debate with Baker Mayfield. Could you win because of Baker Mayfield, or could you win with Baker Mayfield? You won with Tyler Huntley, not because of Tyler Huntley. Whereas I think you won some games because of Jacoby Brissett. You lost some games because you're a bunch of jabronis on the other side of the ball. But
you know what? And some people have tried to say, what does the Pro Bowl really mean? The Pro Bowl is a joke. Okay, I understand that. But Jacoby earned it. That's an award that he can always say, hey, I was a Pro Bowler. Like, I think he deserves it.
Nobody's going to be putting that on their resume anymore.
And you know what? Then later in the day, right after we're all like, Tyler Huntley's a Pro Bowler. Not sure about that one. Then they named Derek Carr.
I will say this, though. I think Derek Carr, based on the fact that where you were on the list because of the other guys that have said no, I think Derek Carr was okay. I think he was fine.
I mean, I'm not saying Derek Carr is terrible, but he didn't even finish the season on his own team. He stepped away from the team.
That's not Derek Carr's fault. That's an organizational fault.
You're right. Okay, maybe I was just a little frustrated about Jacoby Brissett being passed over. So
I would still take Jacoby over him this year. That's fine.
And that's the thing. It's like people acted like Jacoby was just this guy who was not going to give the Browns anything. And really, honestly, he gave the Browns most of their high moments of the year. So I think he was snubbed. I'm upset for him because who doesn't like Jacoby Brissett?
No, and I think that I almost forgot about that happening, by the way, for whatever, like, because it's been slow, right? It's been slow with news and things like that for the teams not in the playoffs, and which is what happens at this time of the year, and that's fine. We understand that. And I was just so hyped today, knowing that the Senior Bowl was going on, knowing that I had access to the tape and stuff like that, which is a new thing for me. And I'm really excited with my new rollover with Browns Wire and all this awesome stuff I think I'm going to be able to bring you guys this offseason. I'm really excited about all of that. And I'm learning how to make film rooms and cut these videos together. And it's not great. I promise you it's not great. It will get there, but it was not great. It was kind of informative and a little bit sloppy of video editing with me, but I'm learning some as we go on the fly. So I was so excited by this. And so I was just, going into the day ready, because I love this. I love the Senior Bowl, Pro Day, and Combine times, because you'll get on Twitter and you'll see clips, right? Clips of dudes that you like or dudes you've never heard of, but draft prospect players. You'll see them, like I turned it on, saw some Keanu Bennett throw in some dudes. I saw DeJuan Jones, the right tackle from Ohio State, who I thought the Browns might target until they re-signed Conklin. Buddy, he checked in at like 358 or something at like 6'8". He was just chucking dudes. But I get excited when I see that. I open up the Twitter and I see, oh man, even if the Browns aren't going to take a tackle, which I don't think they will, not nearly high enough for it to be DeJuan Jones, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I just love seeing it. I'm like, oh yeah, draft football. Yeah, give me more football. And then this Pro Bowl thing happens, and I'm just like, and so I wrote something for Browns Wire, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get it all out. I'm going to put it in one little statement, and we're going to move on. And so I write it, and I say, it was criminal. That's what I called it. I said, it was criminal that this happened. I'm moving on. Turning the page. I'm angry. Nuh-uh. Screw this. I'm done. I'm turning the page. We're turning the page to talk about Derek Hall, the edge rusher from Auburn.
All right.
I really need to see some stuff out of him and Carl Brooks. Those are the two guys I'm the most interested to see. Carl Brooks, we talked about him, the defensive tackle from Bowling Green, the edge player, and Derek Hall from Auburn. What I will say to start this out is his best work on tape is as a /stand-up rusher, which Jim Schwartz loves. So that's an interesting little tidbit. Him and Herbig, the linebacker / edge rusher from Wisconsin, are really, really nice pieces that do a lot of really good stand-up work. Derek Hall doesn't just do stand-up work. He is a hand in the dirt kind of player, but I would not think he's not a 3-down starter in the NFL right now, but I would still take him at 42 is how good I think he is. Dude, this is a sudden athlete. And I used to hear that, right? When draft people would say sudden athlete. And I said, what the heck does that mean? You're making stuff up at this point. And what I started to really realize what it was, at least what it means to me. And that is, he's so explosive off the line of scrimmage. It happens in an instant. It's so sudden. I watched a couple of plays where he exploded off the line of scrimmage and got around the tackle. I don't know, in a second, maybe like a second and a half, just an absolutely ludicrous ability he's got as great a bend as you would want from like a higher pick, but he's so explosive and athletic, and he's got a relentless motor, and he'll fight through it. He has some good hand placement. The dude just doesn't know how to use his hands consistently. And what happens is he gets bodied by some of these tackles. They get their arms in, they get him under the shoulder pads. He doesn't really fight him off very much. He just tries to fight through it. That's just technique stuff. And I know a pretty good technician when it comes to stuff like that. And I think he's running the Browns defense right now. So I love Derek Hall. Watch that name for Browns. Keanu Benton, Derek Hall, Carl Brooks, JL Skinner. Those are the top 4 for me this week. Show me some things. Show me some awesome stuff. Siaki Ika, the defensive tackle from Baylor too, because he's kind of been falling down the boards because he's way too big to not be a bigger deal against the run. But it's going to be fun. The Senior Bowl is going to be really, really fun. Yeah, that's it, man. So
Okay.
I know you had some stuff you wanted to talk about off-season wise and some things you thought surrounding what they needed to do going forward. So
Yeah.
I will step away for a second and the floor is yours.
You know what? I actually had a question for you if you're up for it, because I've been really getting in the weeds with Brown's off-season talk, right? And kind of doing it in a little bit of a different way. I was addressing kind of the picks the Browns have and how trying to disprove this narrative that the Browns don't have the ability to improve. Well, that conversation led to a few different people saying the same point to me. They have all used the point that Andrew Berry has yet to draft a Pro Bowler, which I guess technically is true. However, I feel like when people say that,
somebody tried to say he hasn't drafted or signed a Pro Bowler. And if you think that's the truth and you don't miss the obvious thing that's right there in front of you, then I will say it bluntly, you're an idiot. But go ahead.
you know what? I feel like people completely ignore a lot of really bright spots from Browns draftees, right? Like I'll throw a couple at you. Grant Delpit led your team in interceptions and tackles last year. I understand he was up and down. I still hurt from that flea flicker he bit on. But
led the NFL in terms of safeties. He led all safeties in the NFL in stop tackles this year, which is a very, very good stat to lead.
That's a big deal too, because a lot of the Browns struggled with tackling, and it really felt like Grant Delpit not only disproved the own narrative around him that he was a poor tackler, but is working to improve the narrative around the Browns that they are a poor tackling team, and he'll be here, right? And so on top of that, right, the Browns secondary was a weird situation this year with the miscommunications they had. But underneath of that, and Denzel Ward had some ups and downs too. But I think a consistent that the very new and Browns first draft pick this year was Martin Emerson. I think he really showed a ton of promise. People were excited about him, and now all of a sudden it's like he doesn't exist. And like you said earlier, Jacob, that's a 3rd round pick, and for him to come in and play as well as he did, I'm not saying he's a guaranteed Pro Bowler in the future, but I think it's crazy to act like he could never be one.
Yeah, no, I think so. Here's the thing. You also got to look at some things like from this class, you didn't pick anybody until nearly the 70s. So you had 3rd round picks. I think people's expectations for rookies and draft picks are so irrational that it's not even funny, because you got to think about these things. Think about like what should you actually expect out of a 3rd round pick? A role player, maybe. I don't know. Like your 1st and 2nds, those are guys that you expect to step up. But look at Delpit. Look at what they draft. They draft young, a lot of players with elite level traits that need developed. Well, guess what? Donovan Peoples-Jones developed. Took a couple years. That's what happens. Okay. Delpit needed to improve on some things. Got injured the first year. Last year, not technically, but was essentially his rookie year. You see him start coming alive in the 2nd year after the Achilles, which is what everybody has said is the case with an Achilles the 2nd year. Okay. Develops. Looking good. Playmaker. I think he's a difference maker in 2023.
Okay. Yeah.
Jacob Phillips, awful. Gotcha. Bunch of injuries, also awful. I'm not even going to use going into this past season, it was mainly that he didn't ever play. Now it's that he's awful. Okay, cool. Jed Wills, that is a conundrum.
That's the one.
Because physically, all the talent in the world. I thought had a really good rookie year. I thought struggled with injuries last year. I thought this year, his first half of the season, I thought he was really good. I thought he was flourishing. I thought he was taking the steps forward. And he just doesn't. Whoa, Donovan Mitchell to tie it up, baby. at the buzzer.
Okay.
But anyway, so I just don't know what's going on with him because I think with him, it's all mental. Okay, cool. Jordan Elliott, flop. Gotcha. Anyway, all right.
That's the one. You know what? I just don't want to leave Wills yet because his body language sometimes is, and I know that you can't measure that, but sometimes it just doesn't look like he wants to be.
Well, that's my point.
That's
the issue with him. He's got all the talent in the world when he's out there and he's engaged.
Yeah.
And Bill Callahan is like ripping hair out of his head trying to figure out what's going on there. And I get that because at this point, he's had 2 first-round picks, and I think Greg Newsome. I think moving him in the slot was tough. I don't think he should be in there. I thought he showed a lot of steps forward at the end of the year. I think he could also potentially be a trade piece. So there's a lot of things going on with that.
I like Newsome. I
think he's a good player.
He showed so much promise his rookie year. I am frustrated that they moved him inside. But I mean, if he ends up being a trade piece because you had a surplus, because you found yet another corner that has a lot of promise, Emerson, excuse me, then I'm good with that because that's taking a draft hit, a solid player who I think Newsome is, and turning him into a need that you have. So by all standards for me, that's a good draft pick.
Yeah. And so let's push on. Tony Fields, pretty good special teamer. 5th round pick. Keep in mind, late round pick, not really expected much out of a late round pick like that. Contributor, had some good games, special teamers. Okay, cool. Donovan Peoples-Jones, a legit number 2 option in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Would start on some teams. Wow, that was a 6th round pick. Man, he sucks at this. Anyway, we're moving on. We're looking at JOK.
I do like JOK.
I think he took a step back in some areas, but I think that gets fixed this year. I think that some usage things need to be changed, and I think it was not him. It was the situation that he was in. I think it'll be better this year. Okay, cool. So where are we at? We're at JOK. What am I looking at in the 3rd round of 2021? My goodness. Oh, Nick Harris from the past draft, injuries. You can't really say anything about him. I think he's looked good when he played.
One we glossed over was Harrison Bryant.
He's fine.
I don't think he's bad. And you tight ends take longer typically, right? And it's not like Harrison Bryant was a premier pick. I still think that he could be a contributor on the Browns team. I don't think. Yes, he hasn't done anything super flashy, but I think that's why you paid Njoku to be your tight end 1, and so. Would we like to see more from him? Obviously. But has he been terrible? I don't think so.
Okay, so the Browns didn't have Anthony Schwartz. Yeah, oof. Yeah. Anyway,
there's some misses.
And there's always going to be some misses.
Yeah.
Okay.
There always is.
But MC says this, you got to give guys 2 to 3 years to develop. Yes, especially if they're not 1st or 2nd round picks. So most of these picks are after that. And look at the guys that have had this amount of time, MC, right? Like, so let's look at the first 2, the first draft. Wills, we've already talked about that. Delpit looks good. Elliott and Phillips are misses. Bryant's fine. Harris, we think, is good. And Donovan Peoples-Jones has shown amazing progress developing as pick 187. So you look at Anthony Schwartz, James Hudson's situation, I think he's fine. Tommy Togiai is bad. Tony Fields is a contributor. Richard LeCounte's the only guy that got cut. Demetric Felton. Okay, you're starting to talk about 5th and 6th round picks. Okay, all right. So Martin Emerson and Alex Wright, Alex Wright's a developmental player. I think he'll be a lot better going into this year. David Bell didn't really see much time. Perrion Winfrey makes strides forward. Cade York's a kicker. Jerome Ford and Michael Woods didn't really see the field. Isaiah Thomas showed a lot of promise. And then Dawson Deaton never plays. He gets a terrible injury. Coaching matters too. Yeah. And I think that's the thing with some of these guys like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think he's played monstrously out of position, some things like that. And so I'm looking at it and why I'm saying I'm not going to call him a top 10 drafter. I'm not going to do that. But I'm not going to call him a bottom 5 drafter either, because I've seen some really good players take steps forward, and I want to continue to see if this coaching staff that has developed some of these players already can continue to develop those players and more players. I don't think this is a panic. He doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe he's not a genius yet. Maybe some brakes need pumped there, and maybe some reevaluation some reevaluation of what they use to base some of their picks, I think you will see some changes to some of the guardrails, not the big ones, not the age ones, and not like, I don't think they'll go completely away from elite level traits and just go for production. I think it'll be kind of a mixture, but I do think you will see some run stuffing D tackles is what I'm getting at, because they haven't put a ton of priority. People say, well, they didn't even try to fix defensive tackle. Well, that's wrong, because they've used 3 draft picks on it. They've used all 3 years they've drafted one. Yeah, a middle round guy, but all 3 years they've done it. So you can't tell me they haven't tried. They just haven't been able to pick the right guy. So I do think there you'll see some shift in philosophy and try to figure this out. But I think a lot of that shift in philosophy was shown, and you say, well, where's the proof? The proof is that they fired Joe Woods and they went with Jim Schwartz, and they went with a different style that is still very similar to the personnel they had, but a guy that puts a lot of priority on a position that needs to be able to shut down the run game, which they haven't really prioritized.
To me, I think that we talked about a lot about this entering last year, and it's frustrating to be having the same conversation again, but I think it's important to emphasize this is going to be the first year now where you've got a full season of the franchise quarterback that you traded for. And to this point, I think Kevin Stefanski has called an offense in a more limited fashion. I expect everything and anything to be on the table this year. So like if you told me that Harrison Bryant was the most improved Cleveland Brown of 2023, I'd believe you. I would absolutely. I think that's possible. I have not closed the book on him. I know I see you're shaking your head, Jacob, but I'm just pointing out that there's a lot that can change when your offense improves. Now, in the same breath, the Browns did have a top 10 offense, but it wasn't a top 10 offense through majority passing, right? It was Nick Chubb was one of the best.
It was just an incredibly efficient offense.
Yes. So
it wasn't very explosive.
Especially when you start, like if Deshaun's airing it out however many times, I think you can see a lot of changes. So my biggest questions here, because I think there are reasons to be excited about Andrew Berry, and then we mentioned some of the misses. So I think my biggest questions are, can the Browns get through to Jedrick Wills? Because we are getting to the point where I think we are. I see no reality in which they don't pick up his 5th-year option. Right. That's my opinion. That's my opinion right now, because I think it's difficult to replace that type of thing. And they invested a top 10 pick in him. So I think they're going to give him every opportunity to try to be better. So can Jedrick Wills turn around? Because if he does, right, then all of a sudden you've got Jedrick and Grant, who I think are both could be long-term. I feel better about Grant, obviously, but I think Jedrick still could be if they get through to him. And so then obviously you've got Donovan and you've got Harrison from that draft, but then the misses in Jordan Elliott, Jacob Phillips. I think Jordan Elliott still will probably be on this roster.
I don't.
Okay, fair enough.
He's not shown me a single thing that makes me think that he's improved.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. And the other one that you mentioned that I have really high hopes for is Jerome Ford, because we didn't get to see anything from him really just because, you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But with my assumption is that Kareem Hunt will be on his way out the door. And Jerome was good at it, looked shifty in preseason, right? And then he was good at returning kicks. I honestly think he's going to be another one of those guys where he shows a lot next year. And all of a sudden, that's another pick. That's another feather in Andrew Berry's cap. So no matter how we talk about this, I think I've kind of just come to the place where I say 2023 is make or break for this entire regime. And that's terrifying and so exciting at the same time, because we know they have the chance. We know they have the chance to break through. And Jacob, you're giving us a lot of the answers here. I still think I wanted to tell you as we got to the end here, I still think about how you talked about George Karlaftis and how you were high on him and how, he was pretty tremendous for the Chiefs this year, So the Jacob guy might know what he's talking about a little bit.
Dude, that Karlaftis sack, man, when he got up and was like, I was just kind of like, I can't remember. I know he didn't do the exact thing, but he was just kind of like, doing this stuff. And I like George. I love Karlaftis a lot. I love Joseph Asai, by the way, too. And I think people need to get the hell off his ass because the kid had an amazing game, made a mistake. There's people wanting people sending death threats and all this. It was just disgusting sort of behavior. I love Joseph Asai. I think I had a great game.
That game, obviously, that's the highlighted play because it's right at the end, and that's what pushes Kansas City in field goal range. But you're kidding yourself if you say the Bengals did not have a million other chances to win that game, and they didn't.
And I've seen people talk about this on Twitter, and I agree with it. I'm pretty sure that Kansas City had enough time where they could have thrown a nice 8 to 10 yard pass to get into field goal range anyway. So I don't think it's this definitive moment as some of these people may say.
I do too. The last player I wanted to talk to you about, just as we send this out here, is David Bell, because I know he was a favorite of yours, and I know obviously Kevin Stefanski said he really wanted him. We didn't see a whole lot last year, and so I just kind of want to take the temperature because that's somebody that I haven't really seen talked about a lot, and I think it's hard to gauge truly because, like I said, we haven't seen it. But just Jacob, I'm curious to know what you think.
Well, it's another one of those things where I just don't think what you have. I don't think it's one of those like, you put something into a calculator and the data comes back and it just says incomplete.
Okay.
And I think what I saw from David Bell when he played was that I don't think he's a slot guy like we thought. Like, well, he was never a slot guy, right? He was, hey, we think we can make him our slot guy, like a big power sort of slot guy. And I just don't think that it is really the direction that he needs to go to be the most productive and get the most out of what he can do. I don't really think that's the case. I mean, he could shut me up in like 6 months from now, but like, I really like David Bell. I think whatever thoughts you had about David Bell coming out of Purdue should be the same ones you have right now, other than don't expect him to be the starting slot wide receiver. I think that's it. Okay. Like, I think that's the only changes you should make because we had these unrealistic, and I played my part in it too, unrealistic expectations for what is he, like the number 5 option? Because you've got Cooper and DPJ and Njoku and probably either Hunt or Chubb above him, or maybe even both as receiving options. He's like the 5th or 6th guy in a pass. He's probably like the 5th or 6th option on the field as a pass catcher. Not 6 because you can't have 6, but in an offense that for 11 games wanted to throw the ball less than 30 times.
Yeah.
So there's just not enough to go around in that sort of scheme. And I think that's what what happened with David Bell. I like David Bell a lot as the outside receiver when you slide DPJ or Amari Cooper inside. I talked about this last week with Randy Gursey when we're talking about tight end prospects. I think you can put David Bell on the outside. Appreciate you, Josh, telling everybody like, comment, subscribe.
Thank you.
Absolutely. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Welcome to this train wreck. I just think that the expectations for pick 99 in the draft were as though he was pick 9 in the draft. Okay. And I think that's why people are disappointed. I don't think anything that I saw makes me feel better or worse about David Bell and who he'll be.
It won't surprise anyone who's listened to us for a while that I'm preaching patience in this scenario, and I still have high hopes there. I think you know what, we didn't go like Anthony Schwartz and Richard LeCount. We've got both ends of the spectrum here, so we're gonna see. We really haven't seen a GM be this long tenured consistently like this, and especially with the whole group believing in the same thing, right? Like,
pretty much, yeah.
That's the true difference of this regime. So I'm really hoping that it works out, and that Andrew Berry, because we didn't get
no excuses, man. This is it.
Yeah,
no excuses.
Yes, I agree. I just want to say before we send this out, I am going to start doing. Jacob does some awesome Browns videos. Tyler does awesome things. We got skits and fun stuff from the Dog Chug up on Network 216, which you're really going to like to see because Roger's hilarious. The whole Dog Chug is a great. Ross and Andy and everybody that makes that show great. But I just want to say, so Jacobs mentioned the Cavs today, and I got the NBA Jam stuff. I love the Cavs games, so I'm gonna start doing little like Cavs recaps, Cavs updates, Cavs type content. I'm just gonna put that on the Network 216 YouTube as well, because especially as we get into draft season, that is also NBA season, and before you know it, it's gonna be March Madness, NBA playoffs, the whole thing.
I was just thinking about this the other day because of how long the NBA season is, but we're well past the halfway point, and that's insane. Like, you know what I mean? Because I remember obviously it's been a while since we hit the halfway point, but when we hit the halfway point and they were just like, oh yeah, we're past the halfway point, and I'm like,
well, it's weird because they used to have the All-Star game right at the middle of the NBA season, and now they kind of
they pushed it back.
They pushed it back. So that I think that's why it kind of feels so different. But
I think that makes sense. I think you're right. I think that's why it feels weird to me.
Yeah. But I'm going to start doing those most likely every Wednesday, probably some other times too. But, just look out for that. We're so close to that 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So if you haven't, and like Josh said, the most valuable thing you can give anyone is your time. We appreciate the heck out of all of you guys being here. This has been episode 92 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Nick. He's Jacob. Go Browns.
Yoo-hoo!